Hey everyone, welcome to Area 616. Yesterday, Marvel and Netflix debuted the long-awaited second and possibly final season of The Punisher. So, I started watching it yesterday and I finished it yesterday. So today I wanted to give my thoughts on Season 2 of The Punisher. I'll be doing this in a spoiler-free review section, then followed by a spoilers discussion where I talk about specific spoilery things from the season and where the series could go next. If you'd like to skip straight to the spoilers discussion, here's the time code for it. But in any event, spoiler free first. Going into Season 2 of The Punisher, I didn't quite know what to expect. Earlier reviews from the series ranged anywhere from mixed to very positive, but there was a pretty even number of both. Also, while I liked the first season a lot, I had a good bit of issues with it. Namely, the lack of much action from Frank and the glacial pacing. But the trailer for Season 2 looked fantastic, so I was hopeful, and coming out, I wasn't too disappointed. There's plenty to love about this season, even if there's also quite a few issues I had with it. The season follows two separate stories, basically. Frank getting caught up in a lot of trouble involving a young girl, and then the other story where Billy Russo recovers from his injuries and starts trying to put the jigsaw pieces of his mind back together. So, you may have heard some critics say that these two storylines never have anything to do with each other. Going into this, I thought that must be an exaggeration. I mean, there's no way someone would write two stories into one season, both happening concurrently, with a lot of the same characters, and they never interact in any way. That just doesn't make sense. But it's true. Despite this scene in the trailer,
we have a mutual acquaintance. I'm a Castle and the girl.
John Pilgrim never even knows Billy Russo exists, and vice versa. This is probably the season's biggest flaw, and it's not like the two stories happen at the same time. They do, but the show doesn't follow them that way. It'll focus on Plot A for 3 episodes, and then put all of its focus on Plot B, with all of Plot A just kind of disappearing for 4 episodes, and then it'll go back to Plot A, and so on and so forth. So, not only are the two completely unrelated to each other, but the series makes you wait to get back to whichever one you really want to watch. So in my opinion, which plot was better? The first one with Amy Bendix and John Pilgrim, by a landslide. This is where the majority of the great things about this season happens. Jon Bernthal is Frank Castle. I mean, he continues to give an A+++ performance, even if he might not have as much material to work with. I'll get to that. But Georgia Wickham's Amy Bendix was a highlight as well. She has great chemistry with Bernthal and is a well-written character who I genuinely cared for and would like to see more of. I've noticed a bit of a formula for this series. The story has a lot of similarities to Micro from Season 1. The innocent character caught up in a criminal conspiracy. The two of them spend a lot of time together in hiding. They slowly grow respect of one another. It's a good formula though, and it's just about the only way you can make a character like Frank Castle say what he's thinking. The reason for Amy's troubles, why she's being hunted, was a little weak, if I'm being honest. It was kind of anticlimactic. I was expecting something bigger for the kind of, reaction she's getting, but it didn't ruin that plotline. This story also gave us some top-notch action. The fight scenes in this season are nothing short of spectacular. Everything is fantastic. They're almost as great as Daredevil's. Almost. We get a lot of great Punisher action, him just being the Punisher, punishing criminals. It's what you want to see when you queue up a Punisher TV series. The first 3 episodes are probably the best ones of the season. Episode 3, in particular, is a lot of fun. I won't spoil it though. Although I have to say the first episode might be my favorite. I know that's kind of weird, and doesn't sound like a good thing for the rest of the season, but I don't know, I just really liked that episode. I think it did a lot of things right. Honestly, I was kind of disappointed when they went back to New York. I kind of wish the whole season had been him and Amy road tripping across America. The small town settings actually suit the Punisher extremely well, and it felt like a breath of fresh air after every season of the Marvel Netflix shows being set in New York City. It gave us interesting new characters and a challenge for Frank as he's in unknown territory. dealing with foes he's not familiar with. Also, as soon as he gets back to New York, Plot B, aka the Jigsaw story, begins. And that's where a lot of my problems with this season arise. It brings back a lot of characters from Season 1. Russo, Madani, Curtis, Mahoney, and introduces some new ones like Krista Dumont. One problem is that I've never found The Punisher to have the strongest supporting cast of these shows. I like Curtis, he's a good character. I'm okay with Madani. Some people find her annoying, I don't personally, I think she's fine. But I'm not invested in her like this show seems to think I am. And I will admit that later in the season she does become a bit of a chore to watch at times. Mahoney is actually really good in this show, and I like what they did with him this season. He got a lot more to do than he ever did in Daredevil. Speaking of Daredevil, Karen Page also showed up for one episode. She didn't really do much, but it was fun to see her again, if a little sad knowing it's probably the last time we ever will. And then there's Billy Russo. I liked Russo in Season 1. He was a good villain. Not great, but good. I was excited to see him become Jigsaw someday. And honestly, he just never felt like Jigsaw. And this is where a lot of the show's problems lie. The villains. They're a bit more of a mixed bag this season. I liked John Pilgrim a lot, especially early on. He was really cool and mysterious, and his way of dressing and acting really set him apart from most Marvel villains. But throughout the season, we learn more and more about him, and he actually loses a lot of his intrigue to me. He's one of those villains that I actually feel like could have benefited from less development. But Josh Stewart gives a great performance nonetheless. He's easily the best villain of the season. Billy Russo, though, I wouldn't go so far as to say he was annoying, but he always felt like he wasn't important. I was so much more interested in Pilgrim than I was Russo, so he ended up feeling like a side plot. I'll give Ben Barnes this. He gives a great performance. He did a great job playing Russo's fractured state. I think most of the problems come from the writers. First of all, he doesn't look like Jigsaw. And that's not really Barnes' fault. He can't help what the makeup team did. That was annoying, but most importantly, he's lost a lot of his memories. And this is a mild spoiler, but when he starts out, he doesn't remember that it was Frank who punished him. This sounds like it could be interesting, but it ends up just resulting in him not knowing what to do for quite a while. His side plot begins to feel more like filler because of it. Krista Dumont is a good character. I actually liked her a lot, and her interactions with Russo were interesting a lot of the time. But she suffered from being in this storyline. This is the killer of The Punisher Season 2. The two plot lines are uneven. You care so much about Plot A that Plot B becomes tiring whenever it's on screen. But it's not enough to completely ruin the season. There are a lot of great performances and great action in this season, and some truly great moments. But I was never stirred like I was in previous Marvel Netflix shows. I never audibly gasped like I did when I watched the ending of the first episode of Jessica Jones. I never anxiously sat on the edge of my seat while I did watching Bullseye annihilate Daredevil at the Bulletin in Season 3. And I was never as deeply moved as I was when Frank let go of his wife and family, embracing who he is and killing Rollins in the first season of The Punisher. That was a masterpiece of writing and performances, and episode 12 of The Punisher Season 1 remains my favorite episode of the series, and one of my favorite episodes of anything, ever. There was nothing like that this season. It's kind of static, honestly. Nothing really stirring happens. The plot goes exactly like you would expect it to. There aren't really any big twists or anything, but even so, it's still a very enjoyable time overall. Nothing is so bad that it pulls you out of the experience. It's a flawed, but still good season. And if you're even kind of interested in Frank Castle as a character, I highly recommend you check it out. It's entertaining, but perhaps not as moving as the first season. Alright, now we move into the spoilers discussion. If you haven't watched all of Season 2 yet, put this in your watch later and come back after you have. The main things I want to talk about here are some of the specifics regarding my problems with this season, and what I could see the future of this character being like. So you'll remember I said I was very underwhelmed by Billy Russo this season. The fact that he doesn't remember what Frank did does the pacing no favors. It takes like 7 episodes for him to finally actively go after the Punisher. This season never felt slow, but it did spend a lot of time on storylines you maybe aren't as interested in. This has always been my biggest problem with this series as a whole. All you want to do is watch Frank Castle, but you have to sit through hours of side plots with Madani and Russo and all these other characters to actually get to that stuff, and they're just nowhere near as interesting. Russo was just underwhelming the whole season. He never really felt like Jigsaw, and his death was just awful to me. He ended up getting in a fight with Madani, where he got 3 shots in his gut. So he ends up in Curtis's basement, bleeding out. Frank comes in, shoots him 2 times, and leaves, all without a word. I think I get what they were trying to do here. Give Russo the ending he wouldn't want or whatever. But it just didn't quite work. There was all this build-up of a showdown between Frank and Russo, but that never really comes. It's just Frank executing Russo when he's the weakest he's ever been. I also mentioned that I felt like Pilgrim could have benefited from less development. It's a weird thing to want, I know, but I would have liked Pilgrim to remain the mysterious, unstoppable hitman beginning to end. Instead, they introduced his dying wife and his kids and all of his guilt surrounding his actions, and it just made him less compelling in the end, weirdly. To me, at least. I know plenty will disagree with me, but that's just my 2 cents. I also said that I found the overall reason for everything disappointing. Basically, Amy was hired to take a picture of the ultra-rich Schultz's senator's son kissing another dude, which is a political problem for them considering their ultra-conservative goals. They want him to become a president. I mean, it's fine, I guess, just a little underwhelming. Also, the whole sending an army of hitmen to recover the photo seems illogical. I mean, ever heard of the internet? Could they not just post the picture on Twitter, thereby ruining everything? Sure, they could still have them killed after the fact, but the damage would still be done, and it would look suspicious for the Schultzes if the person who posted these embarrassing photos suddenly turns up dead. I don't know, I just feel like there was probably a better storyline somewhere. The Schultzes are alright. They're not super interesting, but they're perhaps a bit more realistic in some ways. I had all these crazy theories going in that they're part of the Trust, or they're actually the Nucci's or something like that, but no, they're just a couple of wealthy people looking to get richer. In any event, let's talk about the sad truth of all this. This is probably the final season of The Punisher. Did it end well like Daredevil, or on a cliffhanger like Luke Cage and Iron Fist? Honestly, I think it had a good ending. Everyone's stories were wrapped up, and Frank started becoming the Punisher full-time, gunning down 2 rival gangs in the series' final moments. It's a good final scene for the show. I have a lot of the same feelings I do for Daredevil. If it has to end here, it's a great place to do so. But if they do keep it going, I'd be thrilled. However, I'm not as desperate for more episodes as I am with Daredevil. I think in order for Season 3 and beyond to be really great, they would have needed to restructure the whole series. Forget the previous supporting cast, except maybe Kurt, and bring the episode count down to like 8 or maybe 10. That way, the series would be much more focused on the character we're here to see, Frank Castle. Really, 8 would be the perfect amount in my opinion. Of all of these characters, I feel like the Punisher is one of the more unlikely ones to be brought back. Unlike Daredevil or Luke Cage and Iron Fist, he cannot be toned down to PG-13. He has to be TVMA or R. If they can get him and the others on Hulu, then fantastic. But he's not coming back on Disney+, and he's way too controversial for the big screen for Disney. I think he's the most likely one to not make another appearance in the MCU, which is honestly pretty sad to think about. This is a pitch-perfect version of the character in many respects, and I wish we could have gotten to see more of him. Some are saying maybe there's hope. Netflix has been marketing the season a weirdly large amount. Billboards, TV spots, multiple trailers. But I think that just has to do with a lot of the bad rep surrounding the series. With all of the cancellations, a lot of people have gone into this saying, why even bother watching this? They're just going to cancel it anyway. So I imagine Netflix was doing all of this to get interest in the series back up. But what do you guys think? Did you enjoy Season 2 of The Punisher? What were your favorite and least favorite things about it? Let me know all of your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed this and subscribe for more. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.